So there's three types of human beings. ضرب أخلوا بأمره وانصرفوا عما خلقوا لأجله. One group, they completely were dismissive and derelict about what they were commanded to do, and they completely removed themselves from what they were created to do. They واتبعوا خطوات الشيطان or خطوات الشيطان, and they followed the progress of shaitan. وعبدوا الطواغيت. Shaitan really, he is a progressive. Right? He's leading us. He's saying, oh, go this way. Follow these footsteps. So he has his progressive agenda. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to get us back to the garden. So we have a regressive agenda. We want to get back to the golden age, the real golden age. So we're regressives, not progressives. So, they're following shaitan, and they're following the tawaghits, the taghuts. Tawaghit are the idols worshipped beside God. وضربهم وقفوا بغاية جهدهم حيث ما أوقفوا كالموصوفين بقوله تعالى وعباد الرحمن الذين يمشون على الأرض هونا وإذا خاطبهم الجاهلون قالوا السلام إلى آخر الآية. So he says, and the servants of the benevolent one are those who walk the earth humbly, and when the ignorant address them they say peace, and those who meditate on their Lord by night, prostrating themselves and standing up, and those who say, our Lord, deflect the torment of hell from us, for its agony is unrelenting. It is indeed wretched as a dwelling place and an abode. And those who when they spend are neither extravagant nor stingy, but right in between. And those who do not pray to others deities besides God, and do not kill any being made off limits by God, except for just cause, and do not commit adultery, for whatever does that will meet with punishment. His torment will be doubled on the day of resurrection, and he will remain in that state abased. Except those who repent and have faith and act with integrity. In their case, God transforms their evil into good, for God is most forgiving, most merciful. And whoever repents and does good is turning to God, repentant. And those who never testify to falsehood, and when they pass by folly, they overlook it with dignity. And those who don't fall down, deaf and blind before them, when the signs of their Lord are mentioned to them. And those who say, our Lord, grant us delight in our spouses and children, and provide us an exemplar for the conscientious. They will be rewarded with the highest of heavenly abodes for their constancy, and they will be greeted there with salutations and peace. I mean, that's it. It's all in that verse. It's amazing. Furqan, Surah Al-Furqan, from 63 to 76. It's all there. Everything you need to know about what we should be doing while we're here. وَضَرْبٌ تَرَدَّدُوا بَيْنَ الطَّرِيقَيْنِ. So then there's the group that oscillates between these two paths. كما قال الله تعالى وآخرون اعترفوا بذنوبهم خلطوا عملا صالحا وآخر سيئا. That others who admitted their sins, they mix good deeds with foul deeds. فَمَنْ رَجَحَتْ حَسَنَاتُهُ عَلَى سَيِّئَاتِهِ فَهُوَ مَوْعُودٌ بِالْإِحْسَانِ إِلَيْهِ. So the one whose good deeds outweigh his bad deeds, he is promised to have فَهُوَ مَوْعُودٌ بِالْإِحْسَانِ إِلَيْهِ. Allah will show him ihsan, be kind to him. وَعَلَى الْأَنْوَاعِ الثَّلَاثَةِ دَلَّ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثًا. And these three, Allah indicates them in Surah Al-Waqi' when he says, and you were three pairs, three types. Ashab al-Maymana, the people on the right, and what will convey to you the people on the right, and those on the left, and what will convey to you those on the left, and the sabiqun, والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون, and the outstrippers, those are the ones in proximity, drawn near, in gardens of bliss. وعلى هذا أقسم الله تعالى في آخر السورة فقال فأما, and then they're brought back at the end of the chapter of واقعة وأما إن كان من المقربين فروح وريحان وجنة نعيم. As for those who are in proximity, the sabiqun, they have grace and روح وريحان, just complete peace and tranquility and the beautiful scent of the garden in these gardens of bliss. وَأَمَّا إِن كَانَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ فَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ. And as for those who are on the right, they will have peace, those on the right. And as for those who are deniers, astray, فَنُزُلٌ مِنْ حَمِيمٍ, they will be a light upon the hellfire, وَتَصْرِيَةُ جَحِيمٍ, the raging, burning hellfire. إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ حَقُّ الْيَقِينِ, verily this is certain truth. فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ, so glorify the name of your Lord. وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنَ النَّاسِ يَعْصُونَ اللَّهَ وَلَا يَأْتَمِرُونَ لَهُ, so many of them, they disobey Allah and they don't follow His dictates. فَيُقَيِّضُهُمْ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى بِغَيْرِ إِرَادَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ, but Allah will use them, in spite themselves, to do things that they even didn't intend. So they're in disobedience. السعي في نصرته, so He will use them. إن الله لا يؤيد هذا الدين بالرجل الفاجر, Allah will aid this religion even with bad people. من حيث لا يشعرون, they won't even feel, like Fir'aun في أخذه موسى, right? He took his wife took Moses and raised Moses in the house. They weren't intending, they didn't know Moses would destroy them. He would be the source of their destruction. لِيَتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا, the lamb is aqiba. He didn't know it. It's not for ta'lil. It's for aqiba. It's the lamb of consequence. So, and then he says, or like the brothers of Joseph, what they did to Joseph, they had no idea that they were basically aiding Allah in putting him in this position of power in Egypt, because none of that would have happened had not they done what they did. And then وَتَمَكُّنِهِ مِمَّا تَمَكَّنَ مِنْهُ وَيَكُونُ مَثَرُهُم فِي ذَلِكَ كَمَا قِيلَ قَصَدْتَ مَسَاتِي فَاجْتَلَبْتَ مَسَرَّتِي, like the poet who said, you intended to harm me, but you brought me great joy. وَقَدْ يُحْسِنُ الْإِنسَانُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَدْرِي, and sometimes people do good and they're not even aware. وقال الآخر فعل الجميل ولم يكن من قصده فقبلته وقرنته بذنوبه. He did me a good turn, but he wasn't intending it. So I accepted the good turn and considered it from his sins. Right? Because his intention, he gets the reward of his intention, not of the action. وَلَوْ رُبَّ فِعْلًا جَاءَنِي مِنْ فَاعِلٍ فَحَمِدْتُهُ وَذَمَمْتُ مَنْ يَأْتِ بِهِ. So sometimes an action comes from someone and you praise the action, but you blame the actor. فيكون فعله محمودا وفاعله مذموما كما قيل من الخفيف رب أمر أتاك لا تحمد الفعالة. That should be منصوب فعالة فيه وتحمد الأفعال. So sometimes somebody will you'll come and you praise you don't praise the actors, but you praise the action. وقد أوجد الله تعالى كل ما في العالم للإنسان كما نبه الله عليه بقوله تعالى الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم. This is right at the start of the Qur'an, that Allah made the earth a firash. Fakhruddin al-Razi says He made the earth a bed because a bed shouldn't be too soft like sand, so you can't build on it, and it shouldn't be too hard like marble, so you can't build on it. But it's in that middle space. So He made the majority of the earth in that middle space as a blessing to us, so that we're able to live and do all these things on the earth. And then we sent down water and brought forth from all these fruits for you as provision. وَالْأَنْعَامَ خَلَقَهَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا دِفْءٌ وَمَنَافِعُ وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ. And then He brought forth your livestock, that you get your garments that you need from it, like the wool and things, and then you have other benefits, and then you eat them. فقال تعالى وسخر لكم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض جميعا منه. He has subjugated everything in the heavens and the earth. This is the strong anthropic principle. It's affirmed in the Qur'an, this view, because this is a view among scientists, and so we don't need them to confirm us. They need the Qur'an to confirm them. So there's two things. If the science says something, is it like when the Americans went to the moon, it's in the Qur'an, it says وَجَعَلْنَا الْقَمَرَ فِيهِنَّ, the moon is in the samawat, right? This is in the Qur'an. And the samawat are mahfuz, like you can't penetrate the heavens. لَا تَنْفُذُونَ إِلَّا بِسُلْطَانٍ. So when the Americans went to the moon, right? Neil Armstrong, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But that's redundant. He should have said one small step for a man, Yeah. Articles matter. They went to Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti, the great Mufassir, brilliant genius man. And I was blessed to live in his house for a little while with his son when I studied in Medina. And so they said to him, oh, the Americans claim this. He said, well, there's two possibilities. They're lying. And there's a lot of people think that, you know. It's funny. There's like 30% of Americans don't think that they went to the moon. One of my sheikhs in Mauritania took me out one night with a full moon. He said, don't believe them. Anyway, but they went to the moon. And so he said, either they're lying or we misunderstood the book of Allah. Is one or the other. So you know, sometimes there were things that they thought about the Qur'an and then later on science. It's like the embryology. Now we know it's qat'i. We know that the hadith has to mean the first 40 days. It's not 120 days because that's qat'i science. And you don't reject qat'i science. I mean, we believe in science, but it has to be qat'i. It can't be dhanni. And now we know exactly what's happening in those states, not exactly, but we know what's happening in the embryological stages. And we know that it's not a mudgha, you know, for like after 80 days. It's not. We know that. So, so then he gives these amazing verses from Surah An-Nahl. أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ سَخَّرَ لَكُمْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَالْفُلْكَ تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ. Haven't you seen how Allah has subjugated everything in the earth to you? And look at, and He made the boats. They move on the ocean. I mean, Allah created a world where displacement, you know, is a possibility. So, had it not been like that, everything would sink because of the weight. Amazing. So he says God is the one who sends you down water from the sky, from which there is drink and vegetation for grazing. God produces grain for you thereby, and olives and date palms and grapes and all kinds of fruit. Surely in that is a sign for people who reflect. And God has subjected the night to you, and the day, and the sun and the moon and the stars are subject by the divine order. Surely in that are signs for people who discern. Everything God has scattered over the earth for you in different in color and forms. Surely in that is a sign for people who are mindful. And it is God who has subjected the sea that you may eat fresh flesh from it and extract from it ornaments for you to wear. And you see the ships plowing the waves thereupon, that you may seek the God's bounty and that you may be grateful. And God put mountains on the earth, lest it shake with you, and rivers and roads, that you may find your way, and landmarks. And they also find their way by stars. And it's amazing. So then he says, وَأَبَحَ جَمِيعَهَا لَهُمْ, and he permitted all of that for us. كما نبه الله تعالى قل من حرم زينة الله التي أخرج لعباده وطيبات من الرزق. Say, who has prohibited the good things that God has brought forth for His servants, and the pure things from provision. فَلِلْإِنسَانِ أَنْ يَنْتَفِعَ بِكُلِّ مَا فِي الْعَالَمِ على وجه ما يباح شرعا. So it's for the human being to benefit from everything that's in the world, as long as it's permitted by Sharia. وذلك إما في غذائه وفي دوائه وفي ملبوساته ومشموماته ومركوباته وزيناته والاتثاث بصوته وبرؤيته والاعتبار به واستفادة علم منه والاقتداء بفعله فيما يستحسن منه والاجتناب عنه فيما يستقبح منه. وقد نبه الله تعالى على منافع جميع الموجودات وأطلع الخلق عليها إما بألسنة الأنبياء أو بإلهام الأولياء. And so in your provision, in your medicine, in your clothes, in your perfumes, in your vehicles, in the ornaments, in the pleasures you get from sound, from voices, like listening to beautiful voices, recitation, chanting, singing. أو برؤيته والاعتبار به, and your sights, and to reflect and to reflect with it, and to benefit knowledge because of it, and to follow the good things, those things that are hasan, and to avoid those things that are qabih, that are ugly. And Allah said He brought forth all of this for His creation, either through the tongues of the prophets or through the inspiration of the awliya, the allies. وكما أن الحق الإنسان أن يعرف منافع الحيوانات في ذواتها وينتفع بها في المطاعم والملابس والمشارب والأدوية، فحقه أن يعرف أخلاقها وأفعالها وأحوالها فينتفع بها من اجتناب ما يستحسن واجتناب ما يستقبح منها. وقد أحسن من قال تعلمت من كل شيء أحسن ما فيه، حتى من الكلب حسن حمايته لأهله، ومن الغراب بكوره في حاجته. وقد أشار الله تعالى إلى ذلك في وصف النحل. So he says, and like that, it's the duty of every human being to know the benefits of the animals, to know their natures, to benefit from them, to benefit from the food and the clothing and the drink and remedies. And it's the duty of every man to know their nature and their characters and their actions and their states, and to benefit and to use that to bring forth what's good and to avoid what's harmful, what's ugly. And like that, فَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ مَنْ قَالَ, he did well, the one who said, I learned from everything the best of what's in it. Even the dog, I saw how well it guards its owner. I saw from the crow how it gets up early to fulfill its need. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at how He describes the bee. وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ أَنِ اتَّخِذِي مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بِيُوتًا وَمِنَ الشَّجَرِ وَمِمَّا يَعْرِشُونَ. And Allah inspired, your Lord inspired the bee to take from the mountains hives, and from the trees hives, and from the things that you make. ثُمَّ كُلِي مِنْ كُلِّ الثَّمَرَاتِ فَاسْلُكِي سُبَلَ رَبِّكِ ذُلُلًا. And then eat from all these different fruits and traverse the ways of your Lord humbly. يَخْرُجُ مِنْ بُطُونِهَا شَرَابٌ مُخْتَلِفٌ أَلْوَانُهُ فِيهِ شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ. And it comes forth from their stomachs a drink, a nectar of different colors. In it is a healing for humanity. فَنَبَّهَ اللَّهُ عَلَى أَنَّ الْإِنسَانَ حَقَّهُ أَنْ يَقْتَدِيَ بِالنَّحْلِ. So He's telling us, follow the bee. In its following the revelation of its Lord. Be like the bee. كما أنها لا تتخطى وحي الله. It doesn't go beyond the revelation of God. في تحري المصالح طبعا, in seeking out its needs. وكذلك يجب على الإنسان ألا يتخطى وحي الله في تحري المصالح اختيارا. But we should do that out of choice. What the bee does out of instinct, we should do out of choice. And the bee is an amazing animal. There's a great wisdom in the bee. I mean, the bee, they say busy as a bee. The bee goes, first of all, the queen does this dance, and then the bees learn from that where to go, and then they go. So this is all, that even the people that study these things, what do they call it? Entomologists, I think. That study these things, they marvel at these creatures. How does the bee know to do these things? The bee can carry half of its weight, and it goes miles. So it goes and it takes the nectar from all these, and when it's flying back, it has to use the nectar for its own energy. And so when it gets there, it only has a small amount. But when it gets there, it's about 80% water, the nectar. So then they begin to exchange it in their mouths, and then the water diminishes. They carry it in their stomach, and then they vomit it. And then they give it to each other, and that reduces the water until it's not susceptible to mold or bacteria. It's amazing. It's not like food goes bad. Honey doesn't go bad. They found honey that's like 2,000 years old in these ships, these that they found. 2,000. They just didn't have 2,000-year-old bread to eat it with, But they found the honey. So then 12 bees will spend their life to make 1 teaspoon of honey. That's it. The whole life of the bee, 12 it takes to make 1 teaspoon of honey. And all that honey it produces, just think about that. And then it only takes what it needs, and the rest is for the bears and for us and for the other animals that eat honey. It's amazing. But the bee is a great sign of God. And then it does two things. It produces honey, which is a shifa, right, to heal the bodies. But then it produces wax. That for millennia, humans used wax to read by night and study and illumine their homes. So the bee it's a great gift. And that's why Ibn Ata'illah says, be like the bee. Don't be like the wasp. Like, be like the bee. And they won't bite you. They won't sting you unless you really have to be aggressive to get a bumblebee to sting you. The wasp will sting you. They just... So believers like bees, kuffar like wasps. In fact, wasp is, that used to be a word, right, for a certain type of people. Yeah, no, but they're not all bad. Just some of them. What time is it? 6:20. We have some time, and I really want to get through. This chapter is a short chapter, so let me just get through this chapter, and then because I only have one more class, and I want to do the last two chapters in that class. We got through almost half the book. It was pretty amazing. He says, الأشياء كلها متساوية غير متفاوتة من حيث إنها مصنوعة. Everything is equal and is not different in that it's created. So everything in its createdness has an equality to it. The fact that it's all created. So it's equal in its creation. بالحكمة, with the wisdom of God, this divine wisdom. وعلى هذا نبه الله تعالى بقوله ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought this to our attention when God reminded us in the Qur'an, you will not see in the creation of the merciful any difference. Right? No fissure. There's no لا تفاوت. It's all the same from the فرجع البصر هل ترى من فطور. Look again. Do you see any cracks? It's all one creation. ومختلف من حيث إن كل نوع يختص بفائدة. But it differs in that every created thing has a specific benefit. وكل نوع وإن اختلف فما من شيء أكثر اختلافا متفاوتا من الناس. And of all the things Allah has created, nothing differs more than the differences found among human beings. كما قال تعالى وقد خلقكم أطوارا. He created you in أطوار, in stages. وقال تعالى ورفعنا بعضكم فوق بعض درجات. And we raised some of you over others in degrees. ليتخذ بعضهم بعضا سخرية. In order that some might take others in usefulness. وَرَحْمَةُ رَبِّكَ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. And the mercy of the Lord is better than what they're doing in their dunya, the gathering for the dunya. وَقَالَ انظُرْ كَيْفَ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ وَلَلْآخِرَةُ أَكْبَرُ دَرَجَاتٍ وَأَكْبَرُ تَفْضِيلًا. And look how Allah has privileged some over others, and in the afterlife there are greater degrees of difference and greater preferences. وقال سبحانه وتعالى ولو شاء الله لجعلكم أمة واحدة ولكن ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم. And had Allah wanted, He would have made all of you one ummah. But it was in order to test you, to see which of you, to test you in what Allah has given you. وقال تعالى وهو الذي جعلكم خلائف الأرض. He put you as these stewards in the earth, vicegerents of God. ورفع بعضكم فوق بعض. درجات ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم. And He raised some of you others to test you in what you have been given. وقال الله ولو شاء ربك لجعل الناس أمة واحدة. Had your Lord wanted, your Lord would have made all of humanity one ummah. ولا يزالون مختلفون. And they continue to differ. إلا من رحم ربك. Except those your Lord has mercy on. ولذلك خلقهم. And for that reason they were created. Allah created them for that reason. ليختلفوا وليرحموا, like to differ and to have mercy shown to them. وعلى هذا المعنى نبه الله تعالى بقوله وفي الأرض قطع متجاورات وجنات من أعناب وزرع ونخيل صنوان وغير صنوان يسقى بماء واحد ونفضل بعضها على بعض في الأكل إن في ذلك لآية لقوم يعقلون. This ayah is a miracle. So this ayah, it says that on the earth are these قطع متجاورات وجنات من أعناب, all of these different, the earth is it's all different parts and parcels, and Allah's just made it different. There's mountains, there's plains, there's desert, there's places where there's permafrost, there's the poles, North and South Pole. So all these are different. And then he made gardens with dates and agriculture and grapes and they're all given the same water. Yusqa bima'in wahid. Now what's interesting, see, I was reading the tafsir, this was last year, I was reading the tafsir of Ibn Ajiba about this verse. And he said that he put ma as nakira because it's not the water, it's a different type of water. He didn't say min al-ma, right? Or min nafs al-ma or something. He said min ma'in wahid. They all are fed, are nurtured from the same water, and we prefer some over others. Fil ukul. Inna fi dhalika la'ayatan liqawmin ya'qilun. So you have all this water. So that is all from the genes that give these different permutations in creation. So human beings have the same thing. So this is only recent discovery. Water molecules surround the genetic material in a very specific way. So these scientists discovered that the texture of the hydration shell depends on the water content and influences the structure of the genetic substance itself. So the water is actually one of the determining factors in why things differ. These findings are not only important in understanding the biological function of DNA, they could also be used in the construction of new DNA. That's what they always want to find, new ways of imitating what God did. But that is just a really interesting point about that. So we preferred some over others. والحكمة المقتضية لذلك هو أن الإنسان لما كان غير مكتف بنفسه حتى لو أن إنسانا حصر وحده لم تنع أو لتعذر بقاؤه أدنى مدة. So Allah did this because the human being cannot, he can't function on his own. It's a very rare human being that can do that. So the human being, even if he was alone, he will not last long. فإن أول ما يحتاج الإنسان إليه ما يواريه. He needs clothes to cover him. وما يغذوه, and he needs food, sustenance. وليس يجده ما يواريه مصنوعا. He doesn't find that made. ولا ما يغذوه مطبوخا. He doesn't find his food cooked. كما يكون لكثير من الحيوانات, whereas animals just find what they need. They don't need to prepare it. بل هو مضطر إلى إصلاحهما. He's forced to make his clothes and to prepare his food. وإصلاح ذلك يحوجه إلى آلات. So and that preparation demands that he have tools غير مفروغ منها, that he can't do without. فالإنسان الواحد لا توصل له إلى إعداد جميع ما يحتاج إليه ليعيش به العيشة الحميدة. So he won't be able to live a praiseworthy life or an enjoyable life without. فلم يكن بد للناس. We need each other. من تشارك وتعاون. الناس للناس من بدو وحاضرة بعضهم لبعض وإن لم يشعروا خدموا. Abu Ala al-Ma'arri said that. Like the human beings, the one to the other, both the Bedou and the sedentary, he said they're serving one another without even knowing it. And that's why I was talking about the pencil. It's just amazing how this is happening. So he says, so for this reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala جعل لكل قوم صنعة وهيئة مفارقة للصنعة الأخرى. Different people have different skills. So like the Chinese have all these skills, the Europeans have all these skills, the Africans have skills, the Americans have skills. All these different groups, he gave them different skills in order to benefit one another. And then you have international trade to facilitate all this. So he says, and they do it with enjoyment. They should. I mean, this is one of the things that Marx pointed out. I mean, the 19th century, the industrialization became so horrible that people lost their if you go to Fes and still you can see the old craftspeople doing their work, it's amazing. It's beautiful work. They sit there and just tap away at their work, and they do that. And if you read in Titus Burkhart's book, Fes, the City of Islam, he has that beautiful comb maker who tells the story of how he can't convince his sons to learn this craft that he learned. And he said, this is a craft that was given to us by a prophet. And he said that, they won't understand, but in doing this craft, I've learned many things about myself. Calligraphy is like that. People that do calligraphy, that really do calligraphy, it has an effect on their character. The Andalusians were more obsessed with training children in calligraphy than they were about anything else. They wanted them to have beautiful handwriting. Something modern people, we've totally lost that. If you look at the penmanship of the 19th century, 18th century, just look at the penmanship of educated people. Look at the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that Spencerian penmanship. The Arabs also, all that calligraphy. People have lost that. But that says something about the soul, the refinement of the soul. So then he says, Allah says, فَتَقَطَّعُوا أَمْرَهُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ زُبُرًا كُلُّ حِزْبٍ بِمَا لَدَيْهِمْ فَرِحُونَ. So they divided their common interests into sects. So each party was pleased with what it was doing. فَاقْتَضَى ذَلِكَ أَن تَخْتَلِفْ جُثَثُهُمْ وَقُوَّهُمْ. And for that reason, they have different bodies even, and different faculties and powers. And himam, the Germans, one of the things that in the story of Islam, Will Durant, he has a chapter on I think it's the Age of Faith. It's in the Age of Faith. But he said the Germans were, all the royalty of Europe wanted German-made carriages. This is like 400 years ago. So the Mercedes is not something new. Like, they've been good at that for a really long time. And then we want porcelain. Chinese, I mean, all the wealthy people had, China. We even call it fine china, right? And this is why Allah says, the Prophet ﷺ said, "I'malu kullun mayasurun lima khuliqa la." Act, because all of you will be facilitated to what they were created to do. قُلْ كُلٌّ يَعْمَلُ عَلَى شَاكِرَتِهِ فَتَكُونُ مَعِيشَهُمْ قِسْمًا بَيْنَهُمْ كَمَا نَبَهَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَلَيْهِ بِالْآيَاتِ الْمُتَقَدِّمَةِ. So the livelihoods are proportioned amongst us, as Allah indicated in the previous ayahs. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَ النَّاسَ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. Had God wanted, He would have made all of you one ummah. ولا يزالون مختلفين إلا من رحم ربك ولذلك خلقهم وتمت كلمة ربك لأملأن جهنم من الجنة والناس أجمعين واختلاف الحصر بين. The difference of people is clear. فالناس إذا اعتبر اختلاف أغراضهم وهممهم فهم في صناعتهم في حكم مسخرين وإن كانوا في الظاهر مختارين. So when you look at the people in their different desires and their objectives and their aspirations in their trades, he said, in reality, they're subjugated to do these things, even if outwardly they look like they're choosing them. وقد أشار النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلى ما يتعلق من المصلحة بالتباين الناس. And the Prophet indicated the benefit of this, the common weal involved in this, بتباين الناس, with the differences amongst humanity, واختلاف طبقاتهم, and their different, the tabaqat, we have different classes in society. The modern people, they want to erase all the class, but the class is a divine wisdom. there's a hierarchy. It doesn't mean they're fixed like in Hinduism where you're just stuck in the class. You can move, but there's a reason, and they'll always have these people. So he says, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يزال الناس بخير ما تباينوا فإذا تساووا هلكوا. People will remain well. They'll remain in a good state as long as they tabayanu. They distinguish themselves amongst one another. There's distinctions. We distinguish ourselves. He said, but if they all become equal, they'll perish. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So the next chapter is why people differ. And it's a powerful chapter. And I definitely need to do that one, and then I can do, because the other ones are, I can do the last two. So I think I can do, inshallah, I'll be able to accomplish what I set out to accomplish, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Any questions? Any answers? Comments? Alhamdulillah. Hold
I was just wondering, does emotion, in all of its variegated aspects, does it emerge primarily from the basal desires, or especially the loftier emotions? Are there other sources? What place does emotion have?
I mean, emotion is mid between. We have a triune brain. So the brain has what they call the R stem, which is the reptilian stem. Then it has the midbrain, and then it has the neocortex. So that's also consistent with the ratio, right? The irascible and the concupiscent. So the ratio is your reasoning, right? I mean, you have intellect, which is still, and then you have ratio, which is movement, and then you have so the thumos, which is the spirit, is this is the source of like your emotions. I mean, there's different. The Greeks thought that the emotions were centered in the liver, and there's definitely a relationship, because I got hepatitis when I was in Africa, and I just became so irritable. It was amazing, and that's one of the signs of hepatitis. And I think that's where the Greeks got that idea. I mean, Hippocrates noticed that people that got hepatitis got really angry, because you're not processing your emotions properly. So. But emotions are, I mean, there's good emotion, and then there's negative emotions, and so there's a balance. But there are high. I mean, love comes out of the emotion. Anger is out of the emotion, and anger is very important. Anger is a really important component to the human being. There's a reason why God gave us anger. We should get angry about certain things. Things should make us angry. But it's controlling the anger, it's using the anger as a positive force and not letting it control you. Because once it controls you, it takes over, and then it's the uninvited guest has taken over the house of the host. And people kill when they're angry, right? It's terrible. I mean, Sayyidina Ali, it's a apocryphal story, but it's an important story, and it's told in many, many Muslim cultures. This was something that was just told, reiterated again and again because of its meaning. So it is, I recognize that it's apocryphal, but it's important of the story of Sayyidina Ali when he was fighting in the battle and he was about to kill this man, and he spit in his face, and then he didn't kill him because he felt anger for himself. Like he was no longer fighting fi sabilillah, it was fi sabilin nafs, which is where a lot of people are. People are angry because of what happened when they were children. I mean, there's all this pathology out there. All these people shouting and screaming. There's a lot of people, like in America, there's so many people they were abandoned as children, just abandoned. Because the modern world, you either have single mothers that have to put their kids into these daycares, And these daycares are with people, there are 30 kids in this room, and the caregiver or the two caregivers being paid minimum wage or not very much. I mean, they just don't have a lot of empathy to be giving each child those needs that it has. Those first 7 years are really important for children. If they don't get what they need, they're going to spend the rest of their life looking for it. And then it becomes tragic. And there's all these people, putting tattoos all over their body, now on their faces. Because it used to be, like when I was young, like if you were a rebel, you had one tattoo. Well, now everybody has one tattoo. So what does the rebel do? I'll do the whole arm. Well, now a lot of people are doing the whole arm. So now what do? I'll do the neck. And then now people are trying to do the neck. So what do? I'll do the face. It's, so it just gets more and more extreme. But the reason that a lot of people have a need to do these things is because they weren't looked at when they didn't get the glance of the mother when they were young, when they needed it. So they're going to spend their life bringing attention to themselves, dyeing their hair purple, doing outrageous things. And it's a tragedy. But it's all from neglect. I mean, most of the world's problems are just from child abuse. Really, just child abuse. It's all these abused kids out there. So terrible. I mean, even a lot of all these sexual problems are related to child abuse. So many of these women were molested as children. And so, we have to have compassion for people because there's a lot of suffering out there. Anything from the...
I'll do online questions, inshallah. So the first question is, one of the purposes of the human being is imara. What exactly is meant by imara?
Imara it's one of those comprehensive words in Arabic. I mean, it's related to the word for life, Umar, and Amara. Imarat al-Masjid was the caretaking of the masjid. This is what the Quraysh were given. They had Imarat al-Masjid. But it also means Imarat al-Masjid includes just going and praying in the masjid. That's part of Imarat al-Masjid. So when the community prays in the masjid, they're doing Imara. It's bringing to life things. And that's part of what we were created to do, to bring our civilizations to life, bring knowledge to life, to build all these different things. I mean, why have stripes on a why do that? What is that? That's imara. That's why do the Afghan or the Palestinians or the Moroccans, why do they do all that tatriz? Like, why do they do that? That's imara. It's ihsan. They're making something beautiful. They're making it more beautiful. It's like this carpet. It could have just been one color, but it was done in a way to make it more beautiful. And that's part of imara, is just making things beautiful. But it's civilization, and one of the beauties of Islam is that it acknowledges Aboriginal peoples. It doesn't destroy Aboriginal peoples, because there's something very beautiful about Aboriginal people. They remind us of something. One, they remind us of the simplicity of life. They remind us also that we don't need really very much to live. They also remind us of a kind of a constraint in lifestyle. Like their lifestyles are not going to impinge on their surroundings to the degree where it actually begins to harm us. So Islam never eliminated the Aboriginal people like Christianity did. I mean, Christianity just saw the Aboriginals as, we need to get rid of them. We need to make them sedentary. We need to put them in these classrooms and turn them into images of ourselves. The Muslims never did that, but what they did do, which is very interesting, and the Mauritanians are testimony to this, they created the first scholastic Aboriginals. You'll never find this anywhere. There are Bedouin that teach logic and grammar and rhetoric and mathematics and the atomic theory of al-Baqallani, and they're Bedouin living in tents, drinking, milking their camels. No other civilization has done that, and that is a proof of Islam. The Mauritanians are a proof of Islam. The Zawaya of Mauritania, they're a proof of it, and I saw it with my own eyes, so I'm not exaggerating this. They're the only, there's no other Aboriginal peoples in human history that I know of or have heard of that became scholars. And now some of the greatest scholars in the Muslim world are from these Bedouin who grew up in tents. They're literally now some of the top scholars. I mean, Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya is recognized as one of the top Usuli scholars in the world, and he grew up in a tent. Muhammad Hassan al-Dadu is considered one of the top scholars in the Muslim world. All these scholars respect his knowledge. He's Mauritanian. And many others. Sheikh Muhammad Ramin al-Shinqiti, he was the greatest mufassir. Probably maybe, he's up there with Tahir ibn Ashur. I mean, those are the two greatest mufassirun of the 20th century. Well, Tabat-Tabai, I'll add there's three. But there's not any other ones that are significant in the 20th century. Tabat-Tabai in the Shia tradition, incredible Qur'an tafsir he did. And then Tahir ibn Ashur and Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti. And Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti did something that hadn't been done before. I mean, Tahir ibn Ashur, it's a beautiful commentary, but it's very consistent. I mean, it has some really interesting modern aspects to it, but it's very consistent with traditional. Whereas Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti did a tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran, like it's really using the Quran to interpret the Quran. So it's a unique tafsir in that way. Madiha.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
One thing I noticed from last session and today's session when you were talking is emphasizing the importance of quality and the beauty of quality, whether that's, craftsmanship, the way we dress, the way we, showcase the food. Why do you think we've almost regressed in that kind of department?
In the loss of quality?
Mm-hmm. That loss of quality, and what are ways we can almost reintroduce that?
It's a really great question. There's a book, which I think is an extremely important book that's worth reading for anybody that wants to understand the age. It's called The Reign of Quantity by René Guénon. It's a really, really fascinating book, but I think he really gets to the heart of it, that the world, the Enlightenment project it begins really with a kind of, I mean, even just before that, if you look at Bacon, Francis Bacon, he said we must put nature to the rack, like torture it to get its secrets. And he actually uses the word rape also. And so there's this kind of violent European sickness and I don't like to collectivize because there's many great things about Europe and things that we should benefit from and things like that. So I don't want to, there's a lot of people, everything came from Europe is evil. Well, it's just not true. The Europeans did a lot of good things as well. And they were the ones, the British, in fact, were the ones that really eliminated slavery. The Muslims didn't do it. I wish we did. I really wish we had that badge of honor. But it was the British, and they spent a lot of money doing it too. So, but the Europeans had a kind of rapaciousness that is very unusual, and they wanted to understand. And I think the Prophet ﷺ, I believe this, that when he said لو كان العلم بالثريا لناله رجال من هذا وأشار إلى سلمان, in a riwayah, sometimes he said Salman's people. I really think it's these Indo-European peoples are very obsessed with knowledge in a way that other peoples don't have the same obsessions. They want to understand everything. They want to know everything. And the fact that the Prophet used space exploration for that is just really fascinating to me, because they'll even try to get to outer space. Like, if you ask most people in most places, like, do you think we should go to outer space? They're like, what? You know, you crazy? Like, why? I mean, Mauritanians don't even traditionally swim in the ocean. They think you're crazy to go into the ocean, because it's meant to give you lots of awe, right? So they're not going to swim in the ocean for fun. You know, and then when the shark bites you, well, of course, what did you think? It's an ocean, right? So they wanted to measure everything. They became obsessed with measurement, and they developed a science that is so fascinating, which is, and it was interesting that it was the British and the Germans that developed it simultaneously, which is the calculus, which enabled them to do things that nobody before could really do. Calculus has really given an immense amount of power. And it's interesting that the word for measurement and power are the same in Arabic. So qudra and qadar, yuqaddiru, to measure something. So calculus is the ultimate measuring tool. And the infinitesimals, which the Catholic Church tried to outlaw the study of, became an obsession. And so it's been so powerful as a tool, and it's enabled a kind of world that is very different from the previous worlds. And so now STEM is everything. They're just obsessed with STEM, engineers. I mean, it's interesting that Imam Nabrasi, in his book on dreams, he says, if you see an engineer in the dream, it means kharab al-umran wa umran al-kharab, the destruction of civilization and the civilization of destruction. So quantity is important. I mean, it's one of the 10, as you know, the maqulat, right? I mean, those 10, Zayd al-Tawil al-Azraq ibn Maliki, bil-amsi kana fi bayti muttaki, بيده غصن لواه فالتوى تلك مقولات العشرة سوايا. The Zayd is the substance, right? And then Tawil that's the quantity, and then Azraq, black, is the quality. So colors are qualitative; they're not quantitative. We can measure the red, the amount of red in the carpet, but we can't measure the experience of red. That's not measurable. And so beauty is qualitative. It's something that can't be measured. We can't measure the beauty of the Taj Mahal. We can't measure the beauty of a perfectly calligraphed work of art, or the beauty of a voice reciting the Qur'an impeccably. We can't measure that. We can only experience it. And so there's just been an obsession with quantity for quite some time in our civilization, and we've lost quality. And the qualitative arts are the trivium. The quantitative arts are the quadrivium. I mean, they've extended the quadrivium, but calculus is still based on arithmetic and geometry. Geometry is, algebra is an extension of geometry. And they're just extensions of the same basic things, which is number, discrete number, and then number in space. So, you know, differential and integral, you're measuring the rates of acceleration, right? As opposed to averages, which is what people had to do before Newton. You could measure that.